Let's get started. Hi, everyone. My name's Tiandra Williams. I'm a program coordinator with the U.S. Black Chambers. And today we have our first IT series, the one of many. So if for those of you who haven't been to our session, we consider ourselves the voice of Black-owned businesses. And we just provide webinars, financial trainings. And like I said, this will be our first IT series of its kind. So we hope you enjoy. We hope you learn a lot and continue to use the chat. Drop in any questions you may have. And our gracious host, Franklin Donahue, he will be the host of our series. So Franklin, you can go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thank you, Elisa, and thank you for pronouncing my last name correctly, because some people mess that up. But I am Franklin Donahue. I am working with the U.S. Black Chamber on bringing this IT security, cybersecurity, and risk management series to you, webinar series to you. I have 20 plus more years in the risk management and cybersecurity and technology risk management field. I have three endeavors that I'm working with. One is the Black Tech Collaboration, which is for Black tech entrepreneurs, as well as Black technology professionals. Whether you're in cybersecurity or semiconductors, it doesn't matter. But what we do, it's an initiative to really help you get through some of the barriers that you see, whether it's you're an entrepreneur trying to get capital gain, raise capital, or you're in a Black technologist trying to get into the field or other aspects of the field. We have a lot going on there. Also, I have a company, the Donahue Advisory Group, and we do cybersecurity consulting as well. Enough about me. I do want to talk to a good friend of mine, Angela Dogan, and a great professional in the technology and general risk management field. And Angela, if you would introduce yourself, and then I'll start talking more about what we're going to talk about and how we're going to talk about it. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Franklin. As Franklin stated, I am Angela Dogan, founder and CEO of Davis Dogan Advisory Services. And we specialize in all things enterprise risk management, from assisting organizations to build ERM programs, all the way to putting boots on the ground, having assessors conduct risk assessment. So I am excited to be here. Not far behind Franklin in the field. I have 16 plus years in the field. Not everybody faint. We need you alert here. I know I only look 25, which means I started at about 5 or 4, something like that. But we'll let that ride. We'll let that ride. Also, launching this month, I want to put a plug in for the Global Center for Women in Risk Leadership. Near and dear to my heart is increasing the pipeline of folks in the field, especially women, because there aren't enough of us. So in honor of Women's History Month, we will be launching and holding a launch party at the end of this month, March 30th. The event's posted on Eventbrite, and it'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern. And so
although I am not a woman, I am going to attend.
Yes, so we are not discriminating in
that's
having
right.
women participate. And if you go and read about us, you'll see that we also have a man on our board. So there you go. It's all who support the initiative. So you can be a man, you can be a woman, doesn't matter. We don't discriminate. We welcome all to help us, along this journey of increasing the pipeline and introducing women to the field. So there you go.
Right. So I'm going to ask Elisa to keep us on time. We're going to go to about 40 minutes past the hour, and then maybe we'll go 45 minutes past the hour, but allow about 15 to 20 minutes for us to interact with you for questions and answers. So maybe you can queue them up in the chat. I won't be paying attention to chat as we're talking, but maybe around that time, we'll start answering some questions as you have them. This will be a little bit of a conversational style as we're going through this with Angela and me. So we'll start off, Angela, talking about level setting and understanding what is risk, right? We're going to be talking about small, medium-sized businesses, gaining efficiencies. What is risk management? But let's start off with the basics. What is risk? What is risk to you? To you.
So I really like to, from a business perspective, risk is anything that could possibly cause me not to be able to make money and ruin my reputation. And so that's how I begin to look at it. You look at my bio or whatever. I have all these degrees and certs, but really I like to keep it simple, right? And I like to put my shoes in my feet in the shoes of the average person. So when I think about risk, it's anything that's going to stop me from being able to make money and impact my reputation. And so that, in a nutshell, is it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. You know, risk, the objective in a company, one of the objectives, of course, is to make money, have financial stability, whatever, to expand in the market, those types of things. And I think what you said is sort of the first thing that people start to think about is, what are the objectives of my company? What are the operational parts of it, and what could stop me? What could be threats to that? You know, you think of a SWOT analysis and you think of the threats. Well, you have to deal with those threats. But what within that definition of what I just said, what do you think are kind of the key elements, right? What are the attributes, the building blocks of risk, like threat, you know, going through that story, but also the building blocks of a program, if we're going to talk about a program in the aspect of risk management? So
I'd like to lead off as we go down that road with the formal definition that's been given for an enterprise risk management program. And that definition is the method an organization uses to manage the risk of the organization. And it's really the framework or structure for how that organization manages risk. And it's very important for me to point that out, because you'll hear me use enterprise risk management. You'll hear me use ERM, which is the acronym for that, a lot. But what I want people on the webinar to first understand is, if you're a small business, a medium-sized business, or a large business, you still can have an ERM program. And that's why it's important to understand what those building blocks, what those elements of a good program are. And so, you know, risk, specifying risks, identifying them, analyzing them, that's the goal, right? But then you take it a step further when you interject management to being, okay, once I've identified the risk, once I've analyzed the risk, what the heck does that really mean, and what does that include? So it's all about decision, awareness, communication, and decision. Okay, because you're going to make some decisions about those risks. So you want people, processes, and technology at the table to be able to help you do one of 5 things. Here's the top 5 things. Are we going to avoid it? Are we going to avoid the risk? So avoidance. Are we going to reduce the risk? What's our alternatives? Are we going to share and or insure the risk? Or are we going to accept it? Right? And so I'm putting that out there first to give you that frame of mind, that thought process that needs to take place. as you begin to um, build on ERM.
Yeah.
So typically, let's not reinvent the wheel, right? There are some frameworks out there, those that can help you with your building blocks. The first is kind of, deciding what it is you want to, what's your focus? Is it hazard risk? Is it financial risk? Is it operational, strategic, reputational, geographical? It's all about determining what matters or what risk impact your organization. So yes, there are frameworks out there that can help you set that foundation and begin to build upon those building blocks. And I'll just throw out a few: ISO 37000, COSO, the COSO ERM framework. You also have, from an insurance industry perspective, you have the casual I can never say that word, actuarial society framework.
Yeah.
And then you have RIMS, right, which is the risk maturity model.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying all that to say there's options out there.
Mm-hmm. But
first, it's about your mind and how to begin to think about it.
Yeah. From what you said, to sort of galvanize that, and in the simplest terms, if I look at, there's a story, there's a thread of a story. This is the way I like to think about it. There's a thread of a story. So I have a category, maybe it's strategic risk, maybe it's actually, technology or cybersecurity risk, but whatever the risk is, I look at all the threats, all the things that could really go wrong. What's the bad stuff, right? And I create that threat profile. And then I ask myself, well, what, without any controls, without anything to control that bad thing happening, what is the impact on my business? What is it financially? What is it operationally? What is it reputation? And then going on to where am I vulnerable, right? Understanding what I should be doing. This is part of the frameworks that everyone will find out as well that you mentioned, Angela, is they'll tell you, kind of give you guidance on what are the controls, the things that you should have in place based on those threat categories that I just mentioned. So what are the controls that I should have in place? And then you kind of do an assessment. And this is what you were talking about, sort of the analysis is like, I'm assessing my business against the recommended set of controls based on this threat category. And am I vulnerable? Where do I not have controls based on my business? And then understanding where the likelihood is. What's the likelihood that this bad thing, based on the control I have or don't have in place, could happen? And then understanding, and this is the hard part, and this, is risk appetite. How much can I stomach to lose? How much can I lose? What if I lost $50,000 as a small bit or medium-sized business owner on my business? Am I going to go out of business? And that's sort of the challenge that you and I have discussed this before. But that's sort of the challenge with small and medium-sized businesses, because when you think about risk appetite, what am I allowing to lose myself to lose? And then, as you said, those 5 things, avoidance, acceptance, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also in the industry insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Insurance considerations. And maybe I know you've dealt with this. There are people who insure against certain bad things happening, right? And cybersecurity insurance is a growing field. But I will say this before I kind of want you to go on about that, but some people try to substitute insurance as transference of their risk, and it's not. You're either going to deal with the risk now, or you're going to deal with it later. You're going to either pay for it now, or you're going to pay for it later. But what about insurance as a risk management strategy after they've kind of gone through, understanding what the appetite is?
So if you remember, insurance is one of those 5 areas I covered, mm-hmm. right? And you have to make a decision, but I want to be clear to reiterate what you just said about it's not, oh, well, you know what? I won't even worry about the risk. I'll just buy some insurance, right? The insurance will take care of the risk possibilities, and then we can move on. Mm-hmm. If it were only that simple.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
It's not. And so that's one of the things that is very important in understanding as you think about risk, mm-hmm. is that you do have the option. Actually, you have all 5 of those options that I brought up, right? You in a well-rounded program would create scenarios that where all those 5 may apply at one time or another. But the key to that is knowing that it's not a one-all be-all with all the different possibilities of risk that an organization may suffer. The yep. next thing with that too is, we keep bringing up small to medium businesses for 2 reasons. 1, we are small business, each of us. And 2, our niche is small to medium business. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I want to really touch on, aside from that, why small in the risk management space, small to medium businesses are my focus. And so with that, they're my focus because when you talk about risk management, when you talk about cybersecurity risk or any type of technology, the technology area, information security, you tend to think about the fact that, oh my God, here she is talking to us about ERM, but isn't that a lot of money? Like, I don't have the money to build this big program. I don't have the money to put what the big dogs are putting into building up a program and making sure that I'm even, being aware of my risk. And I will tell you that, yes, it does require money, but it probably doesn't require as much as you think. But you don't even really know if you don't entertain the conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So part of our charge here today is to really make people comfortable with entertaining the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to lead us down our tagline a little bit, which is using risk management as a differentiator. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give a story. So when I first entered into this industry, I entered in as a risk assessor. And I was a risk assessor for an organization that I also was building their risk management program for. And in my area was third-party risk, right? So I was assessing a law firm in the mortgage industry. And they barely knew how to say information security, much less have information security in place, right? They were under the premise of what we're talking about dealing with insurance. Look, I got liability insurance. At the time, cybersecurity insurance wasn't the end thing, so they definitely didn't have that. But, we've got liability insurance, so why do we need to worry about that? I keep my files locked up and that's all you need to know. Yeah. Well, what I did was show them, first of all, how important understanding the risk that they are faced with is, and then how to structure a program. And you will chuckle at the conversations we had, because literally the conversations were really about money and having the money to be able to do these wonderful things that he didn't disagree with, he just thought were out of his realm.
Yeah.
Right. And so showing him how, number one, what's in it for him to even care. We talked about money. We talked about, what are you trying to achieve within your organization? Where are you trying to go? Right. And how do you expect to get there? Who do you want your clients to be? Well, if you want your clients to be this group, right, in this sector, and I'm gonna pick on financial services, if you want your clients to be financial in the financial services industry, you want them to be big banks, you got to care about risk management. They don't care that you only have 10 employees, right? It's about the service you provide. So if you can show that you're being proactive in caring about risk management and having a program within your little organization, it will gain you clientele.
Yeah.
He trusted me in that statement.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that it took him about a year, but a year later he hit me up and he said, "Oh my God, Angela, I have 4 of the big 10 banks as clients because I did what you said."
Yeah. So, one of the things that, and that's important. Sometimes, especially in risk conversations, people don't have the time to do it, right? They don't have the wherewithal, because it does take sort of takes self-analysis as well of my company. What am I trying to accomplish? One of the things that I like to tell folks is, look, start off with the objectives of your company. What are you trying to accomplish? And then think about all the things that could possibly keep you from doing that. They're in your control or out of your control. And this is sort of back of a napkin exercise. And then write, all the things that you're doing currently and that you think that you should be doing, even if you don't have a framework. Really start thinking about, these are my business objectives. These are all the things that could go wrong. And that's sort of the worry part. And then you start thinking about, well, what am I doing right? What am I doing right against these threats to mitigate against these threats? The other part of that for small and medium-sized business, for me, that's very practical, is understanding that risk management may not be my core business, right? It's not, right? If I'm in, online, doing my job and selling things, maybe it's widgets or whatever, risk management, cybersecurity, technology risk, that's not my job. So start circling the things that you want to be responsible for as a business owner or as a business in general. Start thinking about, how do I employ, and this is where your expertise comes in, how do I decide on a third party? How do I contract? If I'm going to put something in the cloud, what's the right cloud provider? Because we have limited resources as small and medium-sized business owners. There are other people who have expertise in cybersecurity, managed services, cloud, other applications. You might use Salesforce, right? I'm a big enough business where I can use a customer CRM resource manager. I'm thinking of enterprise risk management, but a CRM solution in Salesforce or something else, right? So those are the things that's sort of a thought exercise to get you started as a small and medium-sized business that's very practical. Where the expertise may come in are areas that you're just not familiar with, like, how do I choose a managed security service provider? Or how do I choose insurance where it's appropriate? Because insurance is not always appropriate. Or choosing the right amount of insurance, and then choosing the right third party to manage that on your behalf, and what are the requirements? Because you're going to defer that risk, even though you're still accountable. It's still your brand. It's still your brand. But what's the best partner to help you manage that risk? Like, I'm not a finance person, so I have a finance person. I have a virtual CFO, right? So I have that. So they help me think about financial risk. right? In cybersecurity, that's what we do. We help people manage and think about their cyber and technology risk when they're putting something in the cloud or they're, managing different cloud instances. So in the area of third-party third-party risk management, talk about choosing, if you would, about choosing the right provider, and what's the thought process that you talk to people about when choosing that third party?
That's a good question. Of course, let's start with the givens, right? Of course, they're thinking about the service they need provided. Mm-hmm. What we typically don't do, though, is we don't think about the risk that's associated with outsourcing that service. And so I encourage organizations to look at the services they want outsourced. What's the risk of them outsourcing it, right? What are all the possibilities that could go wrong with outsourcing it? Because if you understand what could go wrong and how it could go wrong, then who's right becomes a little easier to figure out. Mm-hmm. Because you'll be focused on safeguards that vendor or that service provider, that third party has in place that safeguards them and you against all those things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
And so I tend to tell people to start there, right? Because honestly, it's real easy to say, you know what? I'm not good at finance, mm-hmm. right? I'm not good at accounting. I don't know how to do my books. So I'm gonna hire an accountant. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we go looking for an accountant. And we usually start with this scenario. Hey, Franklin, who's your accountant? Who do you use as an, right?
Right.
But in that whole scenario, I'm not thinking about what is the risk, right, that's associated with me outsourcing that piece that I need. Because if I were to think about the risk, I may still ask you, Franklin, who do you use? Mm-hmm. But when I talk to them, I'm talking to them not only about the job they do, but what safeguards they have in place to protect both of us. Mm-hmm. In the event that these things that I've thought about that go wrong, mm-hmm. or could go wrong. And a lot of people really don't think about it like that.
Yeah.
But I encourage that.
Word of mouth on choosing providers that cover certain risk or blind spots is challenging, because sometimes people don't have the same risk appetite, right?
That's right.
So if I choose a provider, or when I talk to people about choosing provider, I say, what are all the things that you require them to do? What risk do you want them to be responsible for? Who's liable for what, right?
Yep.
Are they storing data of your customers? Or maybe it's an infrastructure, right? So if something goes down and you have a high availability need in your company, from an infrastructure perspective or a business continuity perspective, you need high availability, right? What are the penalties for them? First of all, what happens every hour? What's the cost to me for every hour that my business is down? And for a small and medium-sized business, mm-hmm. it may be pretty high, right? So what's the impact? You talked about impact before, taking it back. So the impact may be a financial impact. I may be down for an hour and lose, $3,000. Who's going to recoup that for me? And is there a clause within our contract that covers that? Sometimes, and this, sometimes in contracts, it's small and medium-sized businesses, we're left with the lion's share of liability, right, or impact. It's on us, especially if you have AWS or Azure. Nothing negative against them, but the point is, sometimes they transfer that there aren't guarantees that say, we're going to keep you up, we're going to keep you running But understanding that in that contract, you need a third party. You got to think about what your risk appetite is, what the sensitivity to your business is if something does go wrong. If the service provider does not provide what you need for your website or anything else, it might have a reputational or strategic or whatever impact on your company.
You know, you bring up contracts too. What's important to also make sure is in the contract is the right to audit. Even if you don't currently have an audit program in place, you still want that language in there so that you can make sure that the risks are covered, right? And that they do what they say they do.
Yeah.
And so that's really important as well.
Yeah, and I would say from a cyber and technology, as you know, or any business you're in, where you have compliance. So let's talk about compliance a little bit too, because we haven't touched on that. But compliance is important in certain industries and businesses that you're in. Ensuring that provider is covering your compliance risk is also important, and making sure that that's in your contract, making sure that is explicit within your contract, because many providers, and I'll tell you, they'll say, yep, we're PCI compliant. Well, what does that mean if you're not? What does that mean to my business if you're not? Because they'll say that, and in the contract, they'll say, oh, by the way, if something happens to your PCI, we're not responsible for that. We're not responsible for your losses. We're not responsible for the impact. But what are you telling folks about compliance risk in choosing third parties, or even within their own companies?
I'm telling them, number one, that we all know it exists.
Yeah.
Let's just be real. Let's put it on the table, right? And the majority of companies, no matter what size you are today, have to deal with compliance, right? The majority of us do. Either we have to be compliant to a regulation, or we have to be compliant to a client and their requirements. So compliance exists. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But what I do really tell people in this area is actually make the decision to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Also make the decision that anybody you do business with does the right thing. And what does the right thing look like? And what the right thing looks like to you, it's your responsibility to make sure that that same right thing looks the same to the people you do business with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so if you do those things, then you in and of yourself minimize compliance risk.
You know what I used to say to people, and I say this to CISOs that I work with, and when I was a CISO myself, I used to say, I made a comment at a board meeting one time. It was like, hey, you know, compliance, we should be better than compliance, because to me it's sort of like someone coming to me and telling me how to take care of my kids. I love my kids. I'm going to take better care of my kids than the government or anyone else can say or can tell me. And someone on the board said, yeah, but Franklin, that's what Child Protective Services are for, because there are some people who don't take care of their kids.
Right.
And I had to think about, you know, but if we have due care, and this is where you as a business owner or even board members, you have due care, right? You have, as a governance and responsibility and accountability, you have to think about the best thing for your customers. And if you take that perspective, if you're thinking about the best thing for the company and your customers, then you'll probably do more than compliance. So thinking about how do I bake in my everyday controls that I was telling, so what are the things that I'm doing, writing those things down? What are the things that I'm doing to cover this threat and this vulnerability? If I write those things down, am I doing enough? First of all, do I care about my business enough? Those are sort of things. Yeah, there's a cost associated. There's a cost of doing business. We get that. But that's a cost of doing business, is taking care of my customer and taking care of my business, and making sure that all of those things are in place. Compliance will fit into that, right?
So Franklin,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
As you were talking, I promised I was paying attention. I was multitasking because I saw something come up in the chat. That is a very good question.
Okay.
And it came from Calvin Patterson. And I want to read it because he raised a very important issue that people ask me about all the time.
Okay.
He said that he's on the board of a nonprofit organization that is growing their infrastructure. And in parentheses, he put board, staff, volunteers, programs.
Okay.
And he asked for our suggestion for introducing the topic of risk as they focus on fund development, in parentheses, sales, and growing partnerships.
Yeah.
I think that is a very good question, first of all, Calvin, because one of the things that I promote is risk management being thought about at the board level. So if they're at the beginning stages of building their company, they're at the right place to start talking about risk because it should be part of the conversation. So how you introduce it is, and I don't know if you've done this, Calvin, but I'll just tell you how I handled it in my nonprofit, because I'm at the same spot. I'm a little bit further than you, but pretty close. Risk and what causes risk. As we as a board, because the first thing I did was, after I got established, was gather the board, right? Because I knew I needed help in areas that I don't have expertise in. And so it was a goal to put together a working board. And in that board, as we were talking about what our goals are, what we're trying to achieve, we also talked about what could impact us from not achieving them.
Mm-hmm.
And in that conversation was risk, right? What risk, these things that could stop us from doing what we want to do, exist. And to answer your question, Calvin, I think that's how you introduce the conversation, right? Here's what we're trying to do. What can stop us from doing it? Franklin, you alluded to this, right? What are those things that can impact us negatively? And how do we handle them?
I'm working with a nonprofit now that I've been involved with. This is sort of, volunteer thing, but and part of what we're discussing is this idea of risk, right? And this is a very timely thing, Calvin, just what you're saying. But one of the things that the founders and the board members are thinking about, and I'm encouraging them to think about, is what are the entities or the groups that may stand against what you're trying to do. First, we had to talk about the objectives, right? And sometimes we think, because we're in nonprofits, and as you're staffing up, if you're thinking about an executive director, as you're thinking about staff, we're thinking everybody. Of course, people want us to accomplish what we want to accomplish, right? But there are other people who are also vying for your dollars, right? It's a competitive market. And some people think nonprofits don't have to operate like for-profits. And I tell you what, donors only have so much money that they've set aside or that they're willing to give. So really thinking about it, a nonprofit, as it's a competitive market. So here are our objectives. These are the things that we are promising to the street that we're going to deliver as a foundation, as a, programs and services, et cetera. These are all the things that could necessarily go wrong. And by the way, these are other people in the area that are trying to do this. We have a choice. We can create an ecosystem of partnership and decide who those folks are that are going to work with this. And this is for profits and for nonprofits. There's an ecosystem for every type of business, even in healthcare. I mean, there's an ecosystem. So thinking about what is that ecosystem of partners and detractors, right? And then based on my objectives and all these other things, how do I staff appropriately? Because
you know what, Franklin?
Part of your risk too is your executive director.
You brought up something, right, in thinking about who you partner with. Also thinking about who out there, maybe your competitors, because there are competitors in the nonprofit world too. Mm-hmm. And to further answer your question, Calvin, when you're having that conversation about who your competitors are, that is also an opportunity to bring up risk from a funding perspective. Because if I had a boatload of money, right, and you came to me and wanted me to donate, right, to your program, your organization, it actually would mean the world to me that you've thought about risk. Because it gives me the mindset that I can trust that you're going to handle things properly because you've given an indication that you face your risk head on, right? Because you've addressed them, you've acknowledged they exist. You're not just trying to sweep them under the rug. And so taking a proactive approach, that's another way to set yourself apart and use risk as a differentiator. Yeah. Just the fact that you acknowledge it as you're beginning to set yourself up, right? Because honestly, that's where it should be thought about.
I do see a comment in the chat now that you call my attention to it about cybersecurity insurers are denying a record number of claims because insured parties are failing to implement required security frameworks.
Oh yeah, I missed that.
Within the organization to help prevent cybersecurity losses. That's a great statement. And I will tell you that compliance areas are very similar because I know of PCI, and this is in a lot of larger enterprises, but PCI will come in and say, well, you weren't PCI compliant, but no, I have my ROC. I have my report on compliance right here. And it shows that my QSA said it was compliant. And it's always at the point of breach. And they will always say at the point of breach, at the time you were breached, you were not compliant, which is always going to be true. It's always going to be true. So the question that I always ask my CISO friends and CIO friends and CTO friends is, can you ever truly be compliant in a world where people are trying to, and machines are trying to attack one another at all times, and there's vulnerabilities everywhere? And the answer is no. You can't ever be truly compliant at every point, at any point in time. So this is where we get into cybersecurity and risk management in general, is understanding that always something could go wrong, right? It's not risk management, and consideration of risk management is not about foolproofing anything. It's what risk will be acceptable. What will I be able to recover from or deal with at the time, right? What is my acceptable level of risk? So that's very important. I love that statement because it's an accurate statement, but there's a nuance to that, and in cybersecurity now, what we're saying is that we're breached. We assume it. So the question is, how do we detect it and harden systems and harden our practices? Let's extend it beyond cybersecurity and technology. How do we harden it, our practices, or have controls in place enough where we will isolate things, bad things from happening in only this little, micro segment, so that it doesn't spread. And UPS did a great job of this, even though that they were years ago breached. They contained that breach only to a certain number of their branches, right? So they did a good job of containment, although they were breached. So that's the consideration. I appreciate that comment. I wanted to acknowledge that.
Well, Franklin, I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
Okay.
I make bean pies, and I only send emails to tell people when their orders are ready.
Uh-huh.
So why should I care about any of that? You get it?
Why should you care about any of that?
You get it, right?
No.
No, I'm saying.
Yeah.
You get it from the standpoint of that's the mindset of a lot of people. I
see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
I just used the whole food industry,
right,
as an example.
Yeah.
But that is the reality of a lot of people. Look, I just send emails to my clients telling them their orders are ready.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. Uh-huh. So I don't have a big infrastructure. I have a laptop in Microsoft Office 365.
Yeah.
Or Google Suite. Right.
I
brought that up.
I put my trust in them. I've chosen them and I put my trust in them. I'm just sending emails. Yes. Right.
Yes.
And this is where many of us in making decisions, Angela, you're dealing with this as well. We default to big providers, and this is why they pick up so much traction. Because and when I was with Deloitte, people used to say this all the time. Well, we chose Deloitte, so there's our risk, right? We chose this provider, so if they're wrong, they've got money to cover it. Well, and that's not always the case, right? And sometimes, and it's from a small and medium-sized business, if you really want to leverage a vendor, one of the things to do is choose a provider that is specific to your size or industry, right? Someone who really understands small and medium-sized businesses, not necessarily large enterprises, and you're just going to be another company that they have, but really understands the needs of small, medium-sized businesses, the risks associated with that, because they're going to have to share, and this is part of it too. How do I pick partners or third parties that are going to share the risk with me?
Hey, Franklin, we have about 5-minute warning.
Okay. All right. Yep. Any other questions? Let me ask if there's any other questions, first of all.
I haven't seen any in the chat yet, but you all continue to drop them if you all have any here.
Okay.
And I brought that whole scenario up to go back to what we said at the very beginning, which is it's risk related to your organization. And you have to look at what risk could impact your organization. Is there any risk? Because I make bean pies and all I do is send emails to my clients.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And if it is, what does that look like? And where do I need to go if I don't even understand that sending emails is a risk?
Yeah. And that's a great summary. And I would say that what we've talked about today is really, number one, understand the objectives of your business. What are you trying to accomplish 360 in all aspects of your business, strategically, operationally. What does your brand mean to you? What's the value? You know, all of these other transactionally, what are the things that matter, right? So really understanding that, because it's all at risk. Angela, and you've said it's all about your business, right? And what you're trying to accomplish. And then look at all the things that could go wrong, even if it's on the back of a napkin. If you're not, talking to Angela, you're not talking to her about the risk, or you're not talking to me. It doesn't matter. Write it down. Start being conscious. It's really, risk management is about discipline and being conscious of what you're trying to accomplish. And it does take some time. It takes some discipline. It takes, if you have a board or you're on a board, even more now than in the past. I'm on a board now because of my risk management background, because they said we have to have a risk management. We have to have somebody who understands this on our board. And that's becoming more and more of a reality. And it's an expectation. Angela said this before, and I completely agree. When we didn't touch on this, we didn't dive deep into this, but I think you should understand, even in the procurement process, if you're part of the procurement, you're in the RFP process, I should say, I would highlight that you have risk management processes and a program in place. It doesn't matter if it's small or big. You have and you choose providers as a small, medium-sized business that also adhere to your risk management directions, right? Yep. So and it's a competitive advantage. Like, wow, this person is thinking about the risk that we could inherit from their practices. They're going to be a good strategic partner, right? Not only are you trying to get that contract, but you're trying to get that relationship. So expressing that and having a program, having the thought process and discipline in place to say, yeah, I've thought about risk. I choose providers based on my risk profile and understanding of risk. And it's a competitive advantage. Angela, awesome. Anything else before our last 3 minutes before we sign off?
No, other than I would just say, please think about, execute against, the implementation of risk management, really, because it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Risk management isn't a revenue generator per se, but it can save you money in the long run. Does it take time? Does it take prioritization? Yes.
Yeah.
Not going to sugarcoat that, but it will pay off in the end. And so I encourage, whether you're a 10-man shop, or 5-man shop, or a 5,000-man shop, to definitely think about risk management.
Right. That's right.
Yes. Yes. If anybody needs services, I will put my email in the chat, and please feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Please do. So I am wanting to thank you both for that. And so I will actually follow up here and just what we have next coming up. And also, you all see, if you really enjoyed this and want to learn some more, again, it is a series. So our actual next IT series will be in this deck. So let's take a look here. All right, so the USBC does have a partnership with Google, and one of those partnerships, we do have a Google Black-owned attribute. This attribute can be found and placed into your Google My Business profile. So if you go to grow.google/Black-owned, you can see how to do this as well on our website, which we will drop in the chat as well, will be on the end of this slide. It does show you how to get to that, as well as we do have webinars actually around how to do this if you need a step-by-step version. This, our buyblack.us, this is our Buy Black Business Directory. It's extremely interactive. We encourage you all to sign up, to encourage your other Black-owned businesses to sign up, as well. It's a great resource and very intuitive how to diversify not only the initial business, but diversify your supply chains, who your IT person is going to be, who your logistics firm is going to be, who your suppliers are. So this really intuitive site helps you do that. And again, we do have webinars around how to sign up. And then that next step is even how to certify your Black-owned business. And then we work with Chase to do webinars around PPP. And then you can just go to chase.com/PPP to apply for your loan. Other webinars that we have that are always standing on our website that you can check out at any time. You would just go to usblackchambers.org/webinars. And as well, we will have upcoming webinars on that page. And then 2 webinars we actually have coming up. One of our Google webinars next will be on the 24th in Create and Deliver Compelling Presentations. That is 12 p.m. EST. And then same, our next IT series is also on the 24th. We'll follow not too long after that, and that will be still with Franklin, and it's 2 p.m. EST. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Please, again, check us out at usblackchambers.org, CARES Act specifically, where you will see all of our upcoming webinars, training, financial literacy information, as well as all of the things we're doing with our great partners. So thank you all. Thank you, Franklin. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
As always, you all have a great day.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.